afternoon. So it is 6 p.m., Thursday, May 5th, 2022. My name is Carl Granrath. I am the hearing examiner this evening. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to allow me to receive evidence and testimony on the matters that are pending. And I will make a recommendation to the county commissioners. So I do not make the final decision. It is the county commissioners who will make the final determination in this matter. I have 2 weeks from tonight's hearing from which I will submit my recommendation to staff, who will forward it to the county commissioners and set it for deliberations before the commissioners. So no one else besides the applicant is here in person. Any persons who may be on Zoom, if you wish to give testimony, there will be a time to do that. So for now, just hang tight on there, and when the time comes for public participation or public testimony, we will bring you in a manner in which you've appeared on Zoom. So as far as procedure, staff will introduce the application, then we will hear from the applicant, and after the applicant's testimony, that's when the public will have their opportunity to make their comment. After the public comment period is done, then the applicant will have a rebuttal period. And as far as time limits, I don't anticipate this being a problem, but there's a 30-minute maximum for the applicant, 5 minutes per individual member of the public, and then another 15 minutes for the applicant for their rebuttal. So, and then for any member of the public who may be speaking, I just ask that you direct all of your testimony towards me, and of course to keep it cordial and polite. So with that, we will get tonight's hearing started. 6:02, I will open up the public hearing for case number zone 21-0002, Kellner zone change.
Good evening, Mr. Hearing Examiner. For the record, Amy Hillen, planner for Kootenai County. The application for a zone change is a request to change a zone from agricultural to rural. The project site is approximately 50 acres. It's located on a peninsula in an area commonly known as the east side of the lake. Its peninsula is just west of Neachin Bay. Access to the subject parcel is provided by Gaza Road, which travels in a westerly direction and then intersects with Highway 97, and 97 travels along the northern boundary of the peninsula. The project site is developed with a single-family residence and accessory structures on the northern portion of the property. It is adjacent to the Gaza Ranch Golf and Lake Club PUD. It's located just right over here. On the south portion of the property, there is the driveway access. As you can see, the property boundary is not directly adjacent to Gaza Road, but the applicants do have an easement to travel across the neighboring property. Again, the proposal is a zone change from agricultural to rural. In the applicant's narrative, they do describe their intention to establish a golf course and a subdivision, but I just want to emphasize that this application is limited to a zone change request at this time. Separate applications are required for any subdivision or future uses. The applicant wanted to emphasize that while the property is contiguous to the Gaza Ranch PUD, it is not a part of the Gaza Ranch PUD, and they do not intend to be an expansion of that PUD. According to the zone change or the zoning map we have here, the parcel again is 50 acres. It is currently zoned agricultural. It is the only agricultural zoned parcel on this peninsula. Surrounding zoning is rural and restricted residential. The rural zone is shown by the orange color, and the restricted residential is the yellow color. The closest agriculturally zoned parcel is, as the crow flies, 3 miles southwest of the subject parcel. So it is the only agriculturally zoned parcel on this peninsula. According to the comprehensive plan, the land use designation is country. The primary purpose of the country designation is to promote open space, agricultural activities compatible with residential development. It also promotes residential subdivisions for both residential and non-residential uses. The secondary purpose of the country designation is to promote economic activities that minimize environmental impacts and do not require a full range of services. I've added 4 photos that the applicant provided. It shows an aerial view of the existing structures, the existing driveway, and gives a very good idea of the slope and existing vegetation. It is heavily vegetated with evergreen trees, for instance. During the agency comment period, agencies did not pose any opposition to the zone change. A lot of their comments focused primarily on future development and any requirements that would be required at that time. The East Side Highway District did note that there is not an existing approach permit for the driveway, and we simply advise the applicant to address that prior to any future development. During the public comment stage, at the time the staff analysis was written, we had only received 5 in opposition. I just want to note that we did receive an additional one prior to the deadline, but it did not have a dire effect on our analysis. There was concerns for spot zoning potentially, and a concern that the proposal perhaps failed the required findings for a zone change. Then there were additional comments focused on future development as well. Again, this, just as a reminder, this is purely for a zone change, not a particular use at this time. I do want to emphasize, though, that the public comments certainly will be addressed at future time of application. They still hold merit, just not particularly for this zone change. For our staff analysis, the applicant has met all application requirements, including the narrative explaining the justification for the proposed zone change. The zone change is compatible with surrounding zoning and the land use. Again, adjacent to parcels already zoned rural and restricted residential. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Therefore, we do not feel that it is spot zoning. It is, again, the only agriculturally zoned parcel on the peninsula. Neighboring parcels range between 0.3 acres and 27 acres. That's attributed to the varied zoning. Restricted residential has a minimum lot size of 8,250 square feet. Rural has a minimum lot size of 5 acres. The neighboring PUD also allows for smaller lot sizes. So to give you an idea of why there's such a wide range of varied lot sizes. The agricultural and rural zone have many permitted uses in common. The main difference here is that the agricultural zone prohibits subdivision, whereas the rural zone does not. Again, separate applications will be required for future development, including those for like a minor subdivision or a golf course or plenty of uses require their own permitting process and required findings. And I stand for any questions that you have.
Thanks. Could you just, I suppose, provide a few more comments on spot zoning, maybe what that is and maybe why this is or is not spot zoning?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, I'll
Go ahead.
on that, Mr. Brown. Spot zoning, thank you, Jack, is known to be a case where it singles out usually small property for the benefit of an individual property owner and in contrary to the public purpose in the comprehensive plan. It has to meet all of those things generally to be spot zoning. In a case like this, what we've sort of glossed over that I think is useful is that this agricultural parcel, by that I mean zoned agricultural, really isn't serving an agricultural need. And the research that I believe I heard through Amy earlier is that originally this was zoned restricted residential, and it was the applicant years ago, the owner at that time, that wanted it in the 70s to go to agricultural. Otherwise, it would have been restricted residential all this time. Or rural, whichever it was originally.
I believe.
So there's a rational basis here. Conditions, I think, have changed in that we don't really have an agricultural use going on here. And I think there's no real argument for spot zoning.
If I might add, sorry
Please.
to interrupt. I just want to emphasize again that the rural zone has many uses in common with the agricultural zone, including agricultural uses. You can still, have livestock or crops or things of that nature. It's not really intense agricultural uses are allowed in the rural zone. Yeah.
Okay, thank you both very much for that. And then perhaps more out of curiosity, but to make the record more complete, when was this PUD enacted or approved or completed? It does look like pretty new construction there.
It was like 17 years ago, if I remember right.
2005, or 2004, 2005 era, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I may have more follow-up questions, but I think that's it for now. So thank you very much. All right, Sandy Young, applicant representative.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Sandy Young, 3906 North Schreiber Way, here in Coeur d'Alene.
You turn your mic on.
Okay, thank you. I don't typically read from a presentation, but I feel like on a zone change, it's important to lay a record. So I'll just be stating the highlights of the narrative that I wrote for this zone change. As Amy had stated, this is a zone change from ag to rural on approximately 50 acres of land. And again, to emphasize, this is not a part of Gaza Ranch, nor is it part of their PUD amendment that's coming up. It's a standalone parcel for an individual who now lives on the parcel. And it is one of the few remaining parcels of land on the east side of the lake that's zoned ag. I brought with me as an exhibit that I think illustrates well the, excuse me. I zoomed out and did a little bit more of a view of the county that I'm sure you've probably looked at, if I might.
So the exhibit 1001 AG.
Just to give you a glimpse of how it truly is, one of the last remaining pieces of ag on the east side of the lake. That property that's in green to the north of it is ag suburban. So the only other agricultural land is when you get down to Highway 3 and different kind of topography, different type of soils. So, and then as we saw in the photos, the site hosts a home that was completed in 2019 with some assorted outbuildings. It was an oversight on my part, not getting the approach permit from the highway district when that home was built. And we have since obtained that approach permit, and Amy has a copy of that as an exhibit. And I actually have an extra, if I can give you mine, yeah.
That'll be HE 1002.
Thank you.
So I apologize for that, and I know that that was something that the county needed to see. Just talking about the soils a little bit on this parcel. Back in 2003, 2004, when Gaza was first planned, I was still working for the county as a land use planner, and actually was a planner on this case and had the benefit of going out there, and on ATVs
There we go.
we were able to tour or see the whole property, and the soils are very shallow there. I don't know if you've been out there, if you've conducted your site visit yet, but you'll see that the bedrock is pretty high, soils are shallow. And the soil survey book of Kootenai County states that the soils are mainly used for woodland recreation and wildlife, that it never was great land for grazing cattle, but that is what the Gazer family originally used it for, and this piece was a separate family, but also used for that. Of course, livestock production is not prevalent in Kootenai County anymore. There could be a few parcels out towards Cataldo where some of that's going on, and maybe up on the prairie, but for the most part, not only is there not a market for it, it's very difficult to find people to do that kind of work anymore. So the comp plan designates the site as country, as Amy stated, and the primary purpose is to protect open space, to promote ag activities that are compatible with rural residential development, and that residential subdivisions that allow residential and non-residential uses are encouraged. I've stated in the narrative that this zone change request is compatible with the dual purpose of the county's country designation in that it protects and promotes open space that is compatible with rural residential development. The applicant never did consider asking for restricted residential zoning. It was always rural, simply because there's no desire to divide the property into any smaller than 4 parcels. And since this is simply a zone change, I won't go into that. That'll be for a whole nother time. A minor subdivision, though, does reduce the need to extend infrastructure over long distances. The home site that we have here is totally self-contained. It's on septic drain field and a private well. The zoning ordinance in Title 8 asks that you prove out certain statements to be sure that this is compatible with the requirements for a zone change. This parcel is zoned ag, and ag zoning dates back to 1973. I was not aware that this property had been zoned differently in the meantime, so I appreciated Amy adding that. The circumstances that justify this proposed amendment. Now, 50 years later, after zoning was established, Highway 97 is still a connector, but there are areas of increased population density all along the way that weren't there when the zoning was established. We can think of Worldmark, Lakeshore Lodge, Arrow Point Resort, and then Gotham Bay and Carlin Bay both have large lot subdivisions that comply with the larger lot zoning. Allowing for large lot, single-family residential development with open space and wildlife corridors helps to maintain the quality of life that embodies Kootenai County. The county has seen over 800 zone changes since 1973, and I did that count about 5 years ago when we were doing quite a few zone changes on Highway 95. I talked with KMPO Director Glenn Miles about this area of the county, and KMPO does oversee this, and there are plans to make improvements to 97, although it's fairly constrained with the topography that's there. But creating 4 additional lots won't, in my opinion, have an impact on this side of the lake. Number 4, the proposed amendment promotes public health, safety, and general welfare. As Kootenai County continues to grow, well-planned large lot subdivisions with minimal impact to public infrastructure should be placed in areas of the county that have been designated as country. Objective 1A of the comp plan is to foster rural and community character by encouraging open space, public resources, low-intensity development. And Objective 1B is to foster existing rural community and character by encouraging land uses to be consistent with existing development. This request supports those 2 goals that were established to protect the public and enhance the county as a whole. I believe this request, number 5, protects the property rights, value, and character of neighboring properties. This subject site is surrounded by restricted residential, more so than rural. This request is compatible with and would not be injurious to the surrounding neighboring properties its development would be less intensive than many of the commercial uses that are already listed and allowable under conditional use permit for the agricultural zone. The effect on the property owner if the request is not granted: due to slope, soil conditions, and lack of market for harvesting livestock, the site cannot affordably or economically be developed as agricultural land. There would be an economic loss to the applicant if it wasn't granted, as they could not develop the land in a manner more compatible with the surrounding and the features of the land, surrounding property and features. Not in conflict with the comp plan. As I stated earlier, the goals of the comp plan are clear, and we're looking for population growth that allows for the inevitable expansion of the county without sacrificing the environment or the quality of life. This zone change will allow for residential development of 5-acre parcels in an area of the county where that type of development is best suited. Zoning performance standards and site disturbance design review criteria will ensure that the development will occur in an environmentally responsible manner. All jurisdictions providing services were given an opportunity to respond and comment, and the only response that we heard that caused me to take any action was to finish off the approach permit, which you have. This is only a zone change amendment, of course, we know that, and all provisions with every other application process will apply. So subdivision, conditional use permit, anything else that's done there will be regulated to those standards, but then also any construction that takes place in addition to the building code has to meet the site disturbance ordinance, or that portion of the code. The county at that time, as well as public agencies, can impose any other conditions to more fully protect the environment. In summary, there are residential as well as commercial uses in close proximity to this site. There are no viable agricultural uses in the vicinity of the property. This property's highest and best use will be found under the rural zoning designation. Thank you.
And Stephanie Blaylock? Do you have anything to add? Okay, before I let you off the hook, let me double check. I don't have any questions for you on your application. Did answer some of my questions I did anticipate asking, including about the approach permit. If you can come back up with just one or two more questions.
Certainly.
You know, I know we are constrained here to specifically the zone change. I guess I'm wondering how far along the process you are of doing a site assessment, looking into the availability of infrastructure, specifically water, and drain fields, et cetera.
Yep.
And where you're at in that process.
Okay, great question. We pre-apped with the county. When we pre-apped for the zone change, Stephanie pre-apped also for the conditional use permit and the minor subdivision. And as a standard practice in my business, we don't ever get to that point without examining that viability. We never want to take a client down a path and then have it shot down when we're halfway through. So we looked at well logs in the area to ensure that there would be availability of water. The fact that it's 50 acres gives them more opportunity to draw from. So we found that it would be supported for both residential and golf course development. There's a pond on the property, again, because of the shallow bedrock, groundwater. There's a portion of that property, and I would guess if I had to say an acreage, I'd say 2 acres that holds that pond and pond water in it most of the year. And some of that will be used for irrigation. When we say the word golf course, I don't want to give you the thought that it's going to be anything open for the public or that it's large. It is simply to serve the homes that are there. And it is planned to be 9 holes. And that's as far as we've gotten on that. I know they have not contacted anyone to do a lay of the land on it because they don't want to get into that kind of expenditure without knowing that it is viable. So as far as subdivision and minor sub, since we do more of those and we're more well-versed, we've gotten a little further along in that, but haven't really spent any money until we see if the zone change is going to be approved. Or spent the client's money.
Okay, sorry, 1 second. What was the other question I was going to ask you? And just following up, to your knowledge, do you know when it was last used for agricultural purposes, if ever?
Gosh, it wasn't when I was there in 2004, and neither Gaza Ranch nor this property was being used. I can't say before that.
Okay, I think you've asked the questions I had anticipated ahead of time, so I thank you for that. If I have another one before the end, or if I remember any, I'll bring you back up and ask you, so
Thank you.
thank you. All right, Mr. Callahan, I believe we have at least one member of the public here who wishes to give public comment.
Yes, sir. There's a person under 1776 wartime that may wish to speak. If you do, just unmute yourself and go ahead now.
Hi, my name is Bev Twillman. I live at 15143 South Asbury Road, Harrison, Idaho. And I am concerned it's impossible not to discuss what's proposed when a zone change comes before the county, because those issues that will be created, for instance, the minor subdivision would not be allowed under agricultural, but by the zone change, it is allowed. Therefore, we have all sorts of problems that arise from that. So it's impossible not to think in terms of the consequences of a zone change. It's not going to be anything into the benefit of wildlife, which they've lost so much ground out there due to the building from Gaza Ranch. The wildlife is desperate to find places. I question a golf course on 30 acres because the average size for an 18-hole is 166 acres. So the average size, I would assume, for a 9-hole would be 83 acres. 30 acres for a golf course, a 9-hole golf course, won't leave. I can't see it. And if it's private for just 4 homes, that's one thing. If it's open up, then it becomes commercial. If they are selling membership, for instance, I don't know how that's going to work. And that's not what we're talking about now. I understand that. But the zone change opens up all sorts of problems when you allow a minor subdivision in an area where we're suffering with a deteriorating infrastructure, where the traffic is already so dangerously bad to the public that they're often put in ditches with massive trucks coming and going. Gaza Ranch has absolutely, I think, destroyed parts of Highway 97. And I know they keep talking about the possibility of doing more maintenance on it. They can't, as was pointed out, do a whole lot of enlarging. But we have got to stop destroying the rural areas. And I'm not talking rural in the sense of zoning. I'm talking about the really areas of agriculture, the parts where the wildlife depend on it, the water runoff. The lake now is getting so polluted because we have so much concrete up on that peninsula. And to add more concrete only increases that. So I do think one has to look at the impact of a zoning change. And I don't feel that it's in the best interest of the public, of the lake, of the land. And the man that bought this, the company that bought this, knew what the zoning was when he bought it. And for him to come in immediately then and just ask for a zone change, This is what we're allowing in Kootenai County, and this is what's destroying Kootenai County and the beauty of North Idaho. And I appreciate being able to talk, and I want to thank Amy specifically. You've been very helpful in some of the information you've been sending us, so thank you for that.
Okay, if that's the end of your comment, thank you very much. And I will reiterate, in case you were not here at the very beginning, that this decision will ultimately be decided by your county commissioners, and you will have another opportunity to give public comment at that meeting. Ms. Young, would you like an opportunity to provide any rebuttal testimony? Oh, was
have
that,
one other
there's more,
person.
okay, I apologize.
Janet Torline is online and may wish to speak. Ms. Torline?
Yes, I do, and thank you very much. As Deb stated, the purchaser of this property was clearly aware it was zone agriculture when they purchased it, and their request in no way, quote, promotes the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Kootenai County. I have concerns about the rezoning of the parcel that falls under Idaho law on spot zoning. The test for whether such a zone reclassification is valid is whether the zone change is in accord with comprehensive plan. This proposal is not compatible with comprehensive plan. Therefore, it is an illegal type of spot zoning. As stated, the applicant request has to comply with Section 81.402 amendments to official zoning. I'm going to address, that's a narrative of 8 points. I will address a few of those points. Point number 3, the circumstances which justify the proposed amendment addresses changes in conditions or changes to the comprehensive plan or this title since the existing zone was adopted, or that the existing zoning was made in error. The existing zoning was not made in error. There have been no changes to the comprehensive plan affecting this parcel. So they do not comply with point number 3. There are no circumstances that justify the proposed amendment. In fact, approving the zone changes only makes the real circumstances worse. Point number 4, why the proposed amendment promotes the public health, safety, and welfare. This is probably the biggest point of the request of this zone change. There is absolutely nothing in this request that fulfills this requirement. Nothing. Applicants claim there have been improvements and expansions to transportation corridors, new program controls to protect area lakes, an increase in the number and location of emergency responders, improvements to the local planning, design, engineering, construction, improvements to local roads have been created a natural progression. This is not a natural progression. This is allowing changes to our rules and regulations of commercial and residential areas that lie outside the city limits. State Highway 97 corridor is one such area. Anyone paying attention knows this is the complete opposite what is actually happening in Kootenai County. It is evident that this proposal does nothing to promote the public health, safety, and welfare, and does exactly the opposite. As the roads worsen, EMT, law enforcement, volunteer fire response becomes inadequate, and traffic hazards and crimes increase dramatically. What they're proposing is the antithesis of promotes public health, safety, and welfare. There is no benefit to the public about what would happen if this zone change is approved. This is a move towards a private, for-profit enterprise that will be off limits to anyone but homeowners. It will not serve local residents, nor will it harmonize with the existing rural community, which is Objective 1B's comprehensive plan goal. Point number 5, the effect on the property that is the subject of the proposed amendment and on the property rights, value, and character of neighboring properties. The property proposing the amendment will not be affected as they can sell said property at any time, probably for a profit. Daily, every piece of property in this county incurs a profit. If approved, the value of exclusive high-end homes will increase surrounding property values and cause taxes to rise exponentially. Neighboring year-round genuine rural residents will likely be taxed out of homes such as mine that I have lived in for 50 or more years. The effect on the property owner if the proposed, number 6, the effect on the property owner if the proposed amendment is not granted. No effect. The owner can sell at any time, probably for a profit. They cannot prove there would be an economic loss if the zone change is not granted. Point number 7, why the proposed amendment would not be in conflict with the comprehensive plan. Allowing this zone change will sacrifice the environmental quality and rural surroundings that residents in rural areas are trying desperately to hold on to against what promotes to spot zoning and urban sprawl. The comprehensive plan's goals are to direct growth to the urban core where services are available. It is only by doing so that the environmental resource.
Ma'am, 1 second, please. You have gone over your 5 minutes. I'm sorry to interrupt you, ma'am. You have gone over your 5 minutes. I will give you another 30 seconds.
Paragraph.
I will give you another 30 seconds to complete your statements, but you are over your 5 minutes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what this zone change represents is opposite to these goals. Allowing this zone change sets a precedent for developers to circumvent the rules while area year-round residents pay the price. Developers seeking to change the character of Kootenai County at the expense of the environment and quality of life that genuine rural lifestyle year-round residents cherish. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And will you please state your name and address for the record? I do not believe we got that at the beginning of your testimony. If you're still there, will you please state your name?
Janet Torline, 1802. Yes. Janet Torline, 1802 East Lytton Lane, Harrison, Idaho, 83833.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Callahan, is there anyone else?
That concludes the public on Zoom.
Okay, and again, the applicant, if they would like to address any of those points in their rebuttal, you now have up to 15 minutes to do so.
I just have one statement. And again, just reiterating, this is simply a zone change, and all applications for subdivision, conditional use permit, anything else will be subject to review at that time. Thank you. I should have added on a piece of property that's no longer used agriculturally or cannot be used agriculturally in any viable manner. Thank you.
All right, there being no other members of the public and the applicant having exhausted their opportunity for rebuttal, at 6:39 p.m., I will therefore close the public hearing for Zone 21-0002, Kellner Zone Change. And a reminder that within 2 weeks, I will have my recommendation submitted to county staff, who will bring this application before the county commissioners for their final deliberation and decision on this application. Thank you all very much, and have a good night.